So our first question is about how many people or families did you help?
One.
Okay. Okay. Let's go.
But it was a large family.
Yeah.
Okay, how many people were in it?
Well, there was the mother and 5 kids, so that'd be 6.
Okay, 6. Mother and 5 kids.
Were there any barriers that you faced? So, like, since you were helping people from the war, like, were there any challenges that you had to overcome to help them?
Well, let's talk about the war. You're talking about what we call the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about a different war because Cambodia was right next. Thank you very much,
And
Terry.
additional ones too.
Oh, my heavens, okay. You're talking about the Vietnam War, which ended in 1975, so far as we were concerned. Now, these people always thought of this. The word Vietnam means the whole, country now. And the Americans were involved in the war up to 1975. In Cambodia, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Khmer Rouge. Khmer-Rouge. Rouge is red in French. And the country used to be governed by a prince, a royal family type person. And these people came and took over the country. And they were to a big extent what we call communists. And they were very, how do I want to say?
Violent?
What?
Violent?
Violent. Good word. Thank you, teacher. Now, I'm going to talk about some things that are kind of gory.
Okay.
One of the things is about the Khmer Rouge. And they came in and they did kind of like up in China they did 10, 20 years before that. They came in and they killed all the educated people. So the lawyers, the teachers, the judges, anybody who had an office or was educated, accountants, and they just lined them up and shot them. And then they went out in the country, aside, and this is all very rural area, and these were villages, and the family we're talking about was in a small village. They were farmers, and they were on a home that was on bamboo sticks, so it was up above, and that kept them from the wild animals. We're talking about really rural.
Yeah.
And the village right next to them, the Khmer Rouge came in and just burned the village down, including the people. And the people that we're going to talk about got together. There are about 40 of them in this village, and they said, "We got to get out of here, because guess what? Our village is next, and all they're going to do is kill us." So the father of the family we're talking about was the leader of this village, and his name, I don't know what his name was, sorry, because he died. He died in the United Nations refugee camp. But he led the people from their village, which was right along here, about 40 or 50 miles, and there's a river that's along here that divides Cambodia from Thailand, and the refugee villages were all on the Thailand side, and our family was trying to get across the river. Unfortunately, the Khmer Rouge soldiers were also along here, ready to shoot down anybody that wanted to cross the river.
And this included children. I mean,
Oh, everybody.
everybody, from
Yep.
babies, children.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, on the way from their home out here in the wilderness, they marched, and the father was the leader, and our family at that time had his wife and the 5 children, ranging from about age 14 down to, I'm sorry, there were only 4 children at that time. There were 2 boys, each about 14 or 13, and then 2 girls who were grade school age, 5th or 6th graders. And they marched along here, and they marched back, and they didn't want to go quite to the border because they'd get shot. So what'd they do? They sold everything they had. They gave it to somebody who would, at night, sneak them across the river. So they sold their animals. They sold everything they had, including any money they had, and paid this person to get them across the river safely, which he did. Now, the refugee camp was somewhere around about there, right across the river in Thailand, and the United Nations had set up a place for safety for people just like our family. Now, they were in this camp 6 years. Why didn't they go somewhere? They didn't know anywhere to go. They certainly hadn't heard of the United States of America. and so, and during the camp, the father died about 2 or 3 years after they got to the camp. And so that left the mother, and her name is Kim. I'm getting families mixed up. I'm sorry. Ian, E-A-N, Poi, P-O-Y, and the 4 children. But before he died, they had a fifth child. And so there were the mother after the father died, and 5 children. And they're sitting there in the camp, and the camp is not like a day camp or a Girl Scout camp or something. It's pretty basic. And from that point on, or really before that, the oldest one, now, when you get to high school, you'll find that there is a student newspaper that comes out once weekly called The Mentor. And in The Mentor, they reprinted a story. In the Manhattan Mercury. They reprinted a story that had appeared in The Mentor that is written by this man, and this man was one of the 4 kids.
That's cool.
And his name is Nguyen. Now that's M-O-U-N. Sounds like noun, doesn't it? But they pronounce it Nguyen. And this is his brother, Touch, T-O-U-C-H.
I forgot. Yeah.
E, maybe an E on the end. Yeah, T-O-U-C-H-E. And then the 2 girls, and like I said, the mother her name was Ian. Now in their culture, Ian married was, I guess her maiden name and married name was Poi. That's her last name, P-O-Y. But the kids took the last name of their father, and so it's Nguyen Niang, N-E-A-N-G, and Touch Niang, and the 2 girls were Niangs. And then this 5th one that was born in the camp was N-E-O-U-N-G. Okay, well,
May I take a photograph of that? So
Nope.
we have. Nope. Okay. You're too organized.
I have 3 copies here.
Oh, bless you.
I
Thank
didn't
you.
make one for you.
I don't need one. Thank you.
Now, they're a little hard to read, but that's the whole story that's in the Mercury. Don't bother reading it now, but you're going to find some gory things. While they were going back and forth trying to get out of Cambodia, they were in danger a lot. So you read those, and it's I'll give you those.
Thank you.
Okay, so there was an uncle who had come to the U.S., to Manhattan, Kansas, and I think his name was Dahl, D-O-L.
D-U-L.
D-U-L. And you remember him?
We've interviewed one of the children, Sodi
Really?
Sodi Dole. They I think through either First Baptist Church maybe, or First Meth or Blue Valley. I don't know which.
Well, maybe I've got the wrong name, because the one that was related to our family moved to San Francisco and became a custodian many years ago.
Then it's maybe a different family.
Different family.
Yes. Okay.
But there was a relative
Yes.
who lived in Manhattan. And when you're going to come to the United States, you have to be sponsored by somebody, a person or a family or a church, and that sponsorship basically says, if these people don't have enough money, you're going to pay their bills for a while at least. So you need to be kind of careful when you say you want to be a sponsor of somebody, because you're taking on a financial responsibility. Well, our church, which Mrs. Healy is a member of and I am, were willing to sponsor a family. We had no idea who the family would be, other than, in this case, it was some sort of relationship to the person who now lived in Manhattan. Okay, so in March of 1985, on an airplane, landing in Manhattan, Kansas, on a very cold day. You girls know what it is in February, or March even. Here comes the family, and they're coming from the Philippines, really, because that's where they first went on a flight from Thailand to the Philippines, and then on to Los Angeles, and then on to Manhattan, Kansas. They'd never flown on an airplane before. These are people who were farmers. They didn't have cars. They didn't have anything like we consider modern conveniences. They had never had those things. So they arrived at Manhattan Airport. Have you ever been there?
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
think so.
But not to fly anywhere. Just to bring my dad
Just to
there
pick
once.
up, okay, well, things are much different now. Back in 1985, there was a kind of a small building
Yeah, real small.
and a runway, and here came the family, and some of our church people met them, and it had been a terrible trip. They'd gotten airsick. It was cold. Remember, these people are coming from, where's the equator on here? 15 degrees, 20, 15, 10. Here's the equator down about here. They're a lot closer to the equator than we are.
Yes.
Well, you know what it is. It's not only warm, it's hot.
Yeah.
And in March, here they are arriving in Manhattan, Kansas, and it's probably 20 degrees or something. And they're sitting in the airplane with blankets over their head. They're scared. I mean,
No English.
Yeah.
no English, nobody spoke English. And so they arrived, and our church picked them up and took them to a place that they had found that's near our church, and rented a building. And that's where the family stayed briefly, several months. And then it was time to get them into more permanent housing. So we, the church, moved them to a trailer park. Well, it's fine to be in a trailer park, but only if you have a trailer. So there were 4 families that went together and bought a trailer, a used trailer, and said, we'll put this up, and the family could live in the trailer. And
And you were one of those families.
that's right, my wife and I. And we charged rent. And we charged rent to the church. These people didn't have any money. And so the church paid rent, but there was an interesting stipulation, and that was that after the church got the trailer paid off by reimbursing, in effect, the families, then the families would donate it to the church or to the family. So the family ended up owning a trailer, ultimately. Well, you can read some of this in this story. But I wanted to tell you about the sponsors. That's the church. And every so often, they would ask